Welcome everybody to another episode of Hidden Truth Seventh Day. Um, we are back here, and I tell you what, you take a few weeks off. Nobody knows their jobs anymore. Um, but that's okay. That's okay. We'll get it together. We'll put this banner up so everybody knows we are on Job chapter 15. Um, 7144. Go ahead, jump us off, man.
All right. So, Job chapter 15. So, Eliphaz the Temite replies, he says, Job's words are vain and crafty. He says his mouth utters iniquity. He says his own lips testify against him. So then you get to verse 7. He says, art thou the first man that was born, or was thou made before the hills? Hast thou heard the secret of God, and does thou restrain wisdom to thyself? What knowest thou that we know not? What understandest thou which is not in us? Okay. So then you continue to go down. So we see that he challenges Job, asking him, does he think he knows more or has more wisdom than they do? So then get to verses 11 to 16 ish, and no thing, and he kind of makes a good point. Job, no, Eliphaz makes a good point there that he understands that as men they are technically not good, which we understand no good thing dwelleth in our flesh. So at least he understands that. You move down. He says that the wicked man suffers torment all of his days. He talks about the turmoil, constant struggles of the wicked man. Then you get to verse 25. He said, for he stretcheth out his hand unto God and strengthened himself against the Almighty. Speaking about the wicked man. Then moving down to verse 29, he says, he he shall not be rich, neither shall his substance continue, neither shall he prolong the perfection thereof upon the earth. 30, he says, he shall not depart out of darkness, the flame shall dry up his branches, and by the breath of his mouth shall he go away. Let not him that is deceived trust in vanity, for vanity shall be his recompense. All right, so yeah. So here we go with the kind of the back and forth dialogue, which I'm not sure if it's dialogue because it's three friends and whatever, but back and forth with Job. And so here, a few things that stood out to me, or there were like highlight moments in this, because it does get repetitive after a while. It gets very repetitive as you continue to read. So words vain and crafty, that he utters iniquity. Okay. Challenging Job. Do you know more? Do you have more wisdom? Well, as you continue to read, obviously Job did have a little bit more insight than what they did. I'm not sure if that insight was, at what point did it take place. It seems as if Job was more connected spiritually than maybe what he should have been. And when you continue to read, or you kind of question and wonder, wow, how, or maybe the spirit of God was dealing with him even through, his affliction. That's almost, I don't want to say that's the only way that I think he knew some of the points that he was getting to, Job was able to get to and reach, but I don't know. Yeah. So then he goes on to continue to talk about the wicked man and his false, kind of in their false accusations against Job, which we could see why and see how it happens, of course, as we pointed out multiple times, dealing with this book. But I did highlight verse 29. He said, he shall not, talking about the wicked man, he shall not be rich, neither shall his substance continue, neither shall he prolong the perfection thereof upon earth. Well, we know that that's not true. Because you got people selling their souls and living lavish lives that from the naked eye, according to the lust of the eye, it looks very appealing, very appeasing. So you got people dying in fortune on their way to burn in a hot hell. I'm not even sure the hell is hot, but it'll be thrown in the lake of fire, then it'll be hot. But still, so that he was off on that part. But yeah, we do understand that eventually. Every man will reap what he sows, and things of that nature. Yeah, that's all I really have for 15.
I agree with you so much. The back and forth is very repetitive, but I mean, it's actually debate. It's actually like how we have conversations a lot of times is in a repetitive fashion. You're constantly trying to use different things to bolster your point. And that's what they're doing. They're back and forth. They're trying to use different things to bolster their point. But in light of them trying to bolster their point, they taking mad shots at Joe. But they taking shots at each other. I can't say that Joe's not taking shots at them because he's clearly taking shots at them. But they taking shots back. So Eliphaz takes some serious shots at Job. But he says something that is very interesting because this is how we think. And in general, this is how we think things should go. But in actuality, I'm not sure how often things actually go this way. He says, both the gray-haired and the aged are among us, much older than your father. In other words, yo, we older than you. We have wisdom that you don't have. We have knowledge because in a lot of cases, we have an expectation, which it may be dumbing down now, but we had an expectation of the older you are, the wiser you should be. That was the expectation. And so he's calling out age as a crutch or as a witness that, Job, you might not know as much as we do. We might be right on this one. You might just be completely and utterly wrong. In fact, as he continues on, he gets to talking about the evil man like Job is that guy that is like what you pointed out in 29. He will not be rich, nor will his wealth continue. Well, guess who just lost all their riches? He's taking a shot. Like that's a hardcore shot. That's like he really like, yo, the reason why you lost all your stuff is because you're a schemester, bro. He feels like he's seeing a side of Job he didn't even know existed because he's like, yo, you had to do something wrong. You had to do something very serious for God to punish you like this. And now you don't even want to admit it, bro. You're worse than I thought you was. And I think that's the point of view he's coming from at this point. He's like, yo, bro, yeah, your junk was never going to prosper. Your junk was never going to continue because you won't even, at this lowest point of your life, you won't even admit what you did. We know that God wouldn't have done this to you unless you was wilding all the way out, bro. You had to mess up royally. And just because we don't know how you messed up, you're going to argue back and forth with us. But we're wise too. We're smart too. We're older than your father. I don't even just got you in age. I got your daddy in age. And you're now trying to go to pull the wool over our eyes like we don't know you was into something? And this is just a result of what you were into? You want to keep it a secret? Even now? You're never going to get out of this until you can humble yourself. You know, there's no possible way that you lived a lifestyle where it was nothing. You didn't do nothing wrong. No, every man messes up. But for God to get at you like this, you had to mess up with it. For you to have this behavior, you're not even repentant of your mess up. You're not even repentant. You're going hardcore in the wrong direction. And so that's his response. And he's going through all of this stuff about how evil man is and the end result and how God corrects corruption and all of these different things. He's taking shots at Job the whole time and letting him know you are suffering from your own demise. It's nothing that God is just randomly putting on you. Which in all actuality, I am learning so much from this because and it is the whole pattern of the Bible constantly teaches me how you cannot, and I say this all the time, it just keeps getting revealed to me more and more as I read. There is no way of figuring God out. You cannot figure God out. He's not, people say the language of God is math. At least that's what I heard somebody say. No, it isn't. That's just what you understand. God's language is based upon something that we don't understand. You know, we do not understand God. God is not, he's not mathematicals because math has patterns. God is not a pattern God. He's not a God that you're going to be like, okay, I can figure out God's next step based upon all the things that he has done. If you look at how God has moved throughout all of the scriptures, the one thing that is superbly consistent is it's not predictable. And if you look at the way the people who have the closest, or what we would consider the closer relationships with God, if you look at how they move, they act and react to God like he's not predictable. And you would look at them and say, dang, these guys have to have a tight relationship with God, so they should know certain things about God. But if you look at the way they move, you look at Elijah and how he moved, it would be confusing to you. You know, he calls down fire from heaven and consumes a sacrifice after soaking it with water, kills off 400 prophets. And then Jezebel says a word and he runs scared. And you say, well, he just did all of that. Why he run? He ran because he understands and knows that God, although God did all of those things through him, God could still let Jezebel kill him. You have to keep in mind, Jezebel has killed several prophets of God already. God allowed that to happen. Several prophets of God are hiding in the mountains from Jezebel. God allowed that. How does Elijah know that God is going to protect him from Jezebel killing him? He does not. We think the relationship with God is something that eventually becomes predictable. But the more you know God, the more you learn God, you have to hear from him. If you do not hear from him, you will not predict what he wants to do next. You just will not predict. God's agenda is based upon a specific type of ending. And he is doing everything to execute that. He wants the ending to look like a wedding that he's preparing for his son. And everything is based upon that. And it's just so much information that we don't have, that we cannot jump to conclusions. And that's what you're learning in all of this conversation in Job, is you cannot jump to conclusions with God. But we can continue. Let's go straight to 16.
All right. Job chapter 16. So Job Job answers, and he calls his friends miserable comforters. He says if their roles were to be switched, that he would strengthen them and try to relieve their grief. Job goes on to express, he says that if he speaks, his pain is not relieved, and if he is quiet, the pain still doesn't go away. Job then begins to direct his grief and complaints to God for his current situation. So you get verse 7, talks about how God, he made me weary. Thou has made desolate all my company. Move down to verse 9, said he teareth me in his wrath. 11, he said, God has delivered me to the ungodly and turned me over into the hands of the wicked. 14 says he runneth upon me like a grant. Moving down to 15, he said, I have sewed sackcloth upon my skin and defiled my horn in the dust. My face is foul with weeping, and my eyelids is the shadow of death. Not for an injustice in my hands. Also, my prayer is pure. Okay. So then as you continue to read, Job continues to express his pain and how close he is to death here. Okay. So my notes from this, from chapter 16. Is the first thing that I said is that even when we rebuke someone, whether we are right or wrong, we should still pray. We should still pray for them to be restored. And if you can, you should come back and show them some type of love. So again, that note was even when we rebuke someone, whether we were right or we were wrong in our rebuke, we need to still pray for them to be restored and then come back to show them some type of love. Okay. So yeah, and then I noted rock bottom at our lowest, right? The rock bottom at our lowest, as we see Job. And then I made a note. I said after we had fasted and prayed and etc., and then our situation is the same. The only thing that we can do is continue to keep going. All you can do is continue to go forward. All you can do is continue to see God. That's literally our best bet. That's all we can do. A minister, I remember a minister saying something that it sounded very simple, but it always stuck with me. And he said, what guarantees you victory in a situation that you've been in for a while is that when you feel like giving up, you keep going. So that's something that always sounded very simple to me. But when I begin to reflect back, I was like, yeah, that that does help you eventually. You know what I mean? When you feel like giving up in a situation, you simply you have to keep going. You got to keep pressing. You know what I mean? And you eventually will have victory over that. And then the last connection that I made here was how the book of James starts off after after James greets saints and stuff like that, whatever. The 2-4, he says, my brethren, count it all joy when you fall into diverse temptations, knowing this, that the trying of your faith worketh patience, but let patience have her perfect work, that she may be perfect and entire, wanting nothing. So shoot, I'm not sure how long Job had to stay in this struggle, but I feel as if a lot of patience had to be built, here, and which allows him to be a more perfect spiritual being. You know what I mean? So it's definitely patience was definitely something that stood out to me as far as what Job is going through here as well. And that's what I have for 16.
Yeah, he fired these shots right back at him. Is this when he says it, or is it the next one? Maybe it's the next one. He calls them miserable comforters here. It's probably in the next chapter when he says it. I don't want to say it now because it's probably in the next chapter. But yeah, he fires right back at him, calling them miserable comforters and saying how he would never respond to them the same way. One of the things that I think really sticks out in this one, number 19, it says, surely not even now, my witness is in heaven and my evidence is on high. He's saying there is no way that I can prove to you guys that I'm not not guilty of the evil doing that you guys think I'm guilty of, because you never, like, you're pretty much claiming that I got a secret that I won't tell. Pretty much, that's pretty much what he's saying. You guys are saying I got a secret that I won't tell. God is punishing me for my secret, and the only thing that can resolve me of what you guys are accusing me is the evidence that's in heaven. Like, because God has been watching me this whole time. God knows exactly what I'm guilty of and what I'm not guilty of. And so I can sit back and tell you that I'm not guilty all day, and the evidence isn't here. You know, you guys have a preconceived thought process that says I have to be guilty in order for this to have had happen to me. So your evidence is the fact that everything is gone. The fact that I'm extremely sick and dealing with all of this stuff. I get no peace wherever I turn. Only people that God would ever do this way is people who sinned against him, which these men don't know anything about God's plan for Christ. Because one of the things that, like, reading this puts me in a mindset of is Jesus. It really does. He is good enough to endure all of this punishment and still bless God's name, which is a wonderful example of how God, or the expectations God has for those who honestly and truly believe in him. Your belief will not be wavered no matter what happens to you. If your belief system in God is wavered because you think God has caused upon some level of evil, you've missed who he is, and you wasn't his. You were never his. But there is nothing that God can do. There is no affliction that God can cause on those who are his that would cause them to turn against him or speak ill of him. Because those who are his know that God has what is called creative rights. So the reason why God is not capable of doing anything evil to us is because he's the creator of us. And with that, he has the right to do whatever he plans to do with us. And we cannot call it good. And we can't call it evil. We just can't, which is the irony of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil that he did not want us to partake in, because then we would accuse him. We would use the knowledge to accuse him of things that he is not. It is not. It's not a practical thing to think that God could do one or the other. Everything that he does has to just be good, because he owns the rights to everything that he creates. And so everyone who knows him knows that. So if God decides to do whatever he decides to do with you, you should bless his name anyways. Because you being a created being have to focus on um, the beauty of the fact that you exist because of him, irregardless of how you exist. Which is it's a difficult concept to grasp, but once you have become his and you understand and know him to that level, um, you'll grab it wholeheartedly. Um, and that's where Jesus it clearly was, because of the walk Jesus had was extremely difficult one, especially because he had already had access to glory. And this is also what the difficulties that Job is encountering. Uh, but he's holding on to his integrity because God built him like that. And all of those, like I say, who are going to name the name of Christ, have to embrace the characteristics of Christ, the mannerism of Christ, which you see very clearly played out in the disciples who rejoiced at being beaten, which is something that nobody would, especially not in these days, would have the appetite for. We have to learn to allow these scriptures and to allow these examples to change our minds on how we view God, how God's going to interact with us, and how we're supposed to respond to God's interactions with us. Let's see. I am not certain. I think we can squeeze in. Yeah, we can squeeze in one more. Let's go straight to 17. Let's do it.
Sorry about that. My bad. I had to go get me some coffee, but I'm listening. Okay. So Job is still talking, verse 17, chapter 17, I'm sorry. So Job says his breath is corrupt, his days are extinct, and the graves are ready for him. Job says God has hid understanding from his friends. Job infers that his friends were mockers, not being good friends, etc., that they should agree with him. Then dropping down to verse 10. He says, "But as for you all, do ye return and come now? For I cannot find one wise man among you." So Job continues to express his pain. Then you get to verse 14. He said, "I have said to corruption, thou art my father. To the worm, thou art my mother and my sister." That's crazy. "And where now is my hope? As for my hope, what shall see it? They shall go down to the bars of the pit when our rest together is in the dust." It's very interesting choice of words here that he's using. Okay. But chapter 17 is pretty much straightforward. It's pretty much straightforward. I think I'm not going to say the meat of his reply was in 16 for this specific reply, but for lack of better, me being to explain it better, I feel like the meat of his reply was in 16. Okay, so I actually have a question here. Verse 3 kind of confused me. He says, "Lay down now, put me in a surety with thee. Who is he that will strike hands with me?" Lay down now, put me in a surety with thee. Who is he that will strike hands with me? Okay. I was confused about that. Maybe I should have read it in a different, maybe I should have read the NIV for that one. That was interesting. And then also 14, hidden truth, if you would speak on that one. says, I have said to corruption, thou art my father, to the worm, thou art my mother and my sister. It's just that language was very interesting, almost troubling to an extent too. And that's all I have for 17.
All right. All right. Yeah, if you read that in a different version, it's talking about 3. He's talking about somebody taking a pledge or doing an agreement with them. And so he also goes the second part, like, who will shake hands? Who will make this agreement with me? Who would take a pledge with me? Um he's mocking them. He's mocking his friends um because they don't, because of their lack of understanding. So he's taking another shot at them. Because if you look at the very next thing, which is the one that I was um no, this is not it. It's the next one. But this is another shot. If you look at the very next shot verse, it says, "For you have hidden your heart from understanding. Therefore you will not uh for no, I'm sorry, it says, for you have hidden their hearts from understanding, therefore you will not exalt them." So he's talking to God about his friends, their hearts being hidden from understanding, so therefore they couldn't make an agreement with him. He's so let me read it in my version, so I can make some a little bit better sense of it. It says, "Now put down a pledge for me with yourself. Who is he who will shake hands with me?" In other words, he's saying, "Hey, look, um, put your own life on the line on this whole thought process with what you're saying about how I am engaging, or how God is engaging me, or why God is engaging with me. Put your own life on the line with that." Okay. And he's saying you guys couldn't and wouldn't do it because you don't even have the understanding. The understanding is actually hidden from you. So he's even, I think what he's doing is he's even looking at his situation and saying, God gave me friends to torment me in this situation because he hidden understanding. Like, if God could have exposed these friends to understanding, and then they would have came and been more of a comforter to him than what they are right now, which is pretty much torturous, going back and forth with them. You can imagine that level of aggravation that he's going through, constantly going back and forth with his friends accusing him of doing something nefarious, and he's like, "No, I didn't do anything." Like he's not saying that he didn't do, like, he's never sinned before, right? But he is saying that he's never sinned a sin that he didn't atone for through sacrifice. Okay, and so that's his point of view. So through the sacrifice cleansing you, it makes you perfect. It makes you whole, right? And so that's the process. But you do have to go through the process. And he's like, I've been through the process. And you guys are constantly accusing me of not going through the process, or doing something, because God has hidden understanding from you. You guys couldn't find understanding for any reason right now. There's no way you're going to find it, because God is purposely sending you guys to me to torment me even more. Which it still puts me in the mindset of Jesus. Like, all of these things put me in the mindset of Jesus, because you look at Jesus walking the earth with his disciples, right? He had this he had this same complaint with his disciples. He kept saying, "Y'all don't get it yet. Y'all don't understand it yet. Y'all still haven't get it." But God did hide understanding from his disciples, um, for the whole death, the whole resurrection, and everything, because they were still looking at him like he was going to be David, like he was going to eventually grab a sword and start chopping people's heads off. Um, Never did it, and that's what that's their expectation was. So they kept missing all of um, all of what he was actually doing. He was attacking spirits and not people. You know, he was going to war. Jesus clearly came down and he declared war and he went to war and he fought battles and won all of them flawlessly, like David did, but he did it spiritually and not physically. And they could not, they didn't even pay attention to the fact that he was claiming war in the spirit. They were still waiting on him to claim war in the flesh. And so they never came to that understanding. And I think this is what Job is actually going through with these friends. It's almost like I'm pretty sure Jesus was somewhat tormented in the way that his disciples was reacting to him. And he, like, even if he resurrected, he had to go over through all of the scriptures with them, because at that point was when God was going to open up understanding to him. But it wasn't until the resurrection that understanding was opened up to them, which is kind of similar to this whole scenario to me. I'm just doing so many links and so many parallels. The one disc that I was talking about in the other chapter that I thought was in the other chapter, but is really in this chapter. This is to me like one of the coldest discs, because it actually is like taking a shot at what Eliphaz said 2 chapters ago. He says, "But please come back again, all of you, for I shall not find one wise man among you." So if you remember, Eliphaz says like 2 chapters ago, he's like, "Hey man, we're older than your daddy." You know, in other words, we have wisdom that's beyond your years, because we're not just older than you, we older than your father, right? So he's linking age with wisdom, which, like I was saying before, that's something we do link, and it is true at times and sometimes. But when you're dealing with God, when you're dealing with understanding and knowing God, you will have wisdom beyond your years. And Job is one who has wisdom beyond your years, especially when you deal with the thought process of submitting to the Holy Spirit. Oh man, you will have wisdom well beyond your years. You have access to it. Let's say it that way, because the wisdom is never yours. It's always God's wisdom, right? But you'll have access to wisdom well beyond your years and be able to explain certain things in a way that nobody else in the room understands what you're saying, because you're speaking from a spiritual standpoint. And a spiritual standpoint is not scientific, which is the same thing as what Job is saying in the chapter before. His witnesses in heaven. There are some explanations to certain things that are in this earth. Seeing that the earth came from a place not seen, the only answers are in a place not seen. It's not in the place that's seen. Therefore, it's the reason why the scientific method continuously fails when it comes to answering specific questions, because the answers are not physical. They're not physically seen, just like everything that has been made was made by that which is not seen. Some of these answers are only attainable by the Spirit of God. One of the things that we continuously do, which I continuously talk against, is we try to find answers through time and measure things by time. We continuously measure the earth by time and all those different things by time, when it's a bad measurement. The reason why it took God didn't make the sun and the moon, which is time, or the governors of time. The reason why he didn't make it to the 4th day is because you have 3 days without time. So you can't measure the earth by that which the earth is older than. The earth is older than time. The only thing you can measure the earth by is the word. John 1:1 is trying to illustrate that to us. In the beginning was the word. It's the only thing that's older than the earth, because it didn't have a beginning. It was there in the beginning. But he takes this shot to them. They're constantly going back and forth. And it's the difference between those who understand the word by the flesh and those who understand the word by the Spirit. Job understands God and the things of God according to the Spirit of God, and not according to the flesh. His friends understand it according to the flesh. And this is literally, as I said before several times, this is literally what is happening in the earth when you look at preachers and teachers. You have some preachers that only understand by the flesh, which there is a level of understanding, there's a level of teaching that can be taught, and it has some truth in it when you understand things by the flesh. But if you want to understand the word of God completely, you must have contact with the Spirit of God. God must be speaking to you and breaking these things down to you. If not, you will continuously misunderstand the way Job's friends are continuously misunderstanding. And you'll never grasp the true mind of God without the Spirit of God, without God instructing you and showing you. And we can see that clearly being done in Job. But one of the biggest proofs that it is being done in Job is that he's able to endure such abuse and still hold on to his integrity. That is not humanly possible. That is only possible when you are encouraged and empowered by the Spirit of God. And that is all. So, as I say, pray for me, pray for the channel, pray for everybody you see on the channel. And as we have come to understand and know who you are, we will be praying for you. Lord bless you and keep you.